Hello. I won't tell you who I am, because it doesn't matter. I'm just the voice between what you see and what you were never meant to know. My only purpose here is simple: to give you pieces, fragments of what's been buried. Not to convince you, not to prove anything, but to place a question in your mind that never quite goes away. If one day these videos stop, if the channel goes dark without warning, don't go looking for an explanation. Just know, silence is not always voluntary. Until then, you listen, I'll talk, and together we'll open the next file. Have you ever wondered why the most prestigious universities in America, those seen as beacons of knowledge and civilization, are all quietly tied to rumors about underground chambers that no one is supposed to know about? These aren't just utility rooms or old storage basements. They're hidden levels, rooms that don't appear on any official architectural plans, sealed behind steel doors, unmarked, and buried so deep in bureaucracy that not even tenured professors can explain them. Yet the stories keep surfacing, and they're all eerily similar. At MIT, a group of students once stumbled upon a place they weren't supposed to find. It was buried beneath the media lab, an unlit hallway behind a locked utility door. At the end, they found a room labeled Room 0. Inside, unfamiliar machines, red lights blinking in a steady rhythm, and a wall covered with warnings forbidding photos. The students were later summoned one by one, not expelled, not punished, but each of them dropped out within 6 months, quietly. No record, no explanation. At Yale, beneath Old Campus, maintenance contractors have spoken about a stairwell that leads to a sealed sublevel. They reported seeing biohazard signs, surgical tables, cages for test animals. But the research group responsible, unknown. The university, silent. And when requests for maintenance logs were filed, the documents had been misplaced. Stanford is worse. Rumors speak of a sub-basement 3 levels deep under the biology department. A retired faculty member once hinted that the lab there isn't for biological research, but for sensory isolation studies, using sound and light manipulation to influence perception. No one talks about it. Everyone who's entered reportedly signed a lifelong NDA, an agreement so strict it includes clauses most U.S. corporations can't legally enforce. And then there's the infrastructure. At multiple universities, high-capacity power lines have been discovered running underground, not connected to any building listed on campus blueprints. Fiber optic cables, too, leading nowhere. Some run for hundreds of meters from lecture halls or research wings to places that aren't on the official map. These aren't storage units. These are operations. Harvard, Johns Hopkins, Columbia, they've all redacted public floor plans for their lowest levels. What should be listed as Basement 2 or mechanical level ends at Basement 1. But students in architecture and facilities planning have claimed otherwise. They've seen the original blueprints. Some say there are levels labeled Sub-X or R4, places with no elevator access, no fire exits, and no Wi-Fi or cell signal once you're inside. In Columbia, a plumber was once dispatched to fix a leak beneath the School of Engineering. He was told to hand over his phone before entering. What he found was a dimly lit corridor and a steel door that opened only with a black magnetic key card, no keyhole. Inside, flat panel monitors displaying biometric graphs, heart rates, brainwave patterns, alongside live video of an empty room with no timestamp. The job took 15 minutes. He was kept for over 4 hours afterward to discuss security protocol. The location was logged as Zone R-2. He later searched the campus system. It didn't exist. The list keeps growing. Princeton, Chicago, Brown, all of them. Those who know say nothing. Those who've seen won't talk. And those on the outside, like us, can only connect fragments, rumors, grainy footage, whispered conversations in dorm rooms, leaked floor plans that disappear after 48 hours. It raises a question bigger than what is in the basement. The real question is, why do they all have one? Why would elite institutions across different states, different decades, and different funding sources all build the same kind of off-grid facility hidden beneath the surface of academia? That's not a coincidence. That's a signature, a pattern, something orchestrated on a level beyond campus administration. A shared layer of silence beneath institutions built to seek truth. And in that silence, something still moves. There's something strange that no one ever explains. These universities, Harvard, Stanford, MIT, Yale, they're not just centers of education. They're silent partners in something larger, something older than any syllabus, something that lives just beneath the surface of every lecture hall and lab coat. You begin to see it when you trace the lines, not on a map, but in contracts, in funding, in people. Take Stanford, for example. It has long-standing ties to DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. In the 1970s, Stanford's own researchers were funded to study brain-computer interfaces. That research didn't stop. It just went deeper, disappeared from public journals, reappeared years later in patents held by defense contractors. MIT, one of the earliest partners of ARPANET, the network that became the Internet. On the surface, that's innovation. But deeper, it's surveillance infrastructure before surveillance had a name. Several closed-door departments have entire budgets that aren't disclosed in university reports. Their staff doesn't appear in yearbooks. Their labs are behind card readers that don't even beep when denied. Some don't even exist on the university's faculty directory. They're there, but also not. Johns Hopkins runs what's called the Applied Physics Laboratory, a lab that technically isn't part of the main university. It has contracts with NASA, the Navy, and other government agencies. On paper, it's separate. In practice, it shares access to campus networks, resources, and facilities. It shares students. It shares power. There are stories of students who interned at subsidiary programs only to never return. No LinkedIn updates, no graduation, just silence. You begin to notice another pattern. Every one of these underground levels lines up with government funding at some point in their timeline. But that's not the suspicious part. The suspicious part is that the same architectural firms, the same classified contractors, often tied to aerospace or defense, were hired to build these spaces. And in more than one case, the permits for excavation or deep concrete reinforcement didn't go through the university at all. They came from state-level clearances labeled Federal Infrastructure Support. And then there are the people. Across multiple institutions, there have been sightings. Always the same, a person who doesn't look like they belong. Dressed in plain black, wearing no university ID, standing in back rows of lecture halls, walking hallways at night, entering buildings with keys no one else has. When students ask about them, the answer is always vague. Visiting faculty, security, administrative assistant. But none of those titles show up on staff directories. You can't Google them, and you only ever see them once. In 2011, an internal mailing list at one Ivy League school accidentally CC'd a list of contacts labeled red cell recipients. Among the names were professors, lab techs, a military liaison, and then 6 entries with no first or last name, only initials and clearance levels. Within 3 hours, the entire thread was deleted. Within 24 hours, the sender had resigned for undisclosed reasons. No press release, no thank you email, just gone. But maybe the clearest clue comes from what's not there. In one university, a janitor reported a locked room he passed every night for years. One night, the door was ajar. Curious, he peeked inside and found a room with only one thing, a steel chair bolted to the floor, surrounded by cameras, wires, and what looked like a biometric panel. No signs of a lab, no desks, just a space built to observe something. The next day, the room was welded shut. What are they studying? Why does it require such silence? Why aren't these programs listed, even in redacted budgets? Some claim it's experimental psychology. Others think it's AI alignment research, too volatile to risk exposure. A few whisper about non-human biology. Theories are easy to dismiss until you see the pattern, until you realize how deep the university-industrial complex really runs. And that's the phrase no one wants to say aloud. University-industrial complex, a system where education, innovation, surveillance, and defense blur together in halls that were never meant to be walked by students, where the search for truth becomes a smokescreen for selective control of knowledge, where knowledge is weaponized long before it's published. In these basements, knowledge is not free. It's proprietary. It's compartmentalized. It's monetized. And sometimes it's buried because even those who built it aren't sure it should ever see the light. So the question isn't, why does each school have a secret floor? The question is, what do they all know and who are they protecting it from? Because if you look at them long enough, you'll realize they're not protecting it from us. They're protecting it from each other. If all of this sounds like it belongs in a novel, that's the point. Fiction is the safest place to hide a pattern. People dismiss it. People move on. But fiction has a way of mirroring things we're not ready to face, especially when the mirror is clean. What happens when knowledge is buried deeper than nuclear warheads? When the world's most respected universities, Harvard, MIT, Princeton, Yale, Stanford, aren't just places of learning, but gateways into something controlled? What happens when the people tasked with educating the public are also gatekeepers for what not to say? There's one university whose basement level is nicknamed the Deep Room. No one knows who coined the name. It's not on any plan, but everyone in that faculty building has heard the word whispered. A former TA once claimed he was asked to escort a delivery to that floor. Except the delivery wasn't a package. It was a person, blindfolded, silent, wearing no shoes. When he tried to ask questions, he was told, "This isn't your floor. He never worked there again." There's another story, a more chilling one. A grad student working late one night noticed a motion alert on a lab computer. The camera had picked up something, movement, in a hallway that was supposed to be sealed off for construction. He accessed the footage remotely. At first, he saw nothing. Then, frame by frame, a figure appeared, not walking, not running, just there, every few frames, closer. The student froze. The footage timestamp, 3:17 a.m. He looked at the current time, 3:12. He locked the door. Later that week, the system wiped the footage automatically, and his access credentials were suspended without explanation. Not revoked, just frozen, like a ghost file no one wants to delete. These stories, of course, don't show up on university websites. They don't show up in alumni magazines or donor reports. But they do show up in fragments, in whispered conversations, anonymous posts, journals with missing pages, and what ties them together isn't just fear. It's the fact that everyone who talks about them does so off record. There's even a theory that these underground zones aren't run by any single organization, but by a quiet agreement among a dozen or so institutions. A decentralized council, no name, no building, no logo, just mutual access to a system beneath the surface, beneath funding reports, beneath campus security, beneath the floor plans. In this theory, each school contributes a piece of the puzzle. One tests surveillance response. One pushes memory manipulation. One focuses on environmental control through architecture. Another tests the boundary between consciousness and digital replication. None of them hold the full truth, but together they form something larger, something hidden in plain sight. And if that's true, if even part of it is true, then the most terrifying thing isn't what they're hiding. It's that they don't fully understand it either. That's what makes it dangerous. That's what makes it protected, not from the public, but from themselves, from each other. Because what if these schools didn't stumble into these underground layers by accident? What if they were built for this exact purpose from the start? What if the idea of education was always just the cover? Think about it. These universities have existed for centuries. They were founded by secret societies, funded by monarchs and oligarchs, expanded during wartime, and protected during peacetime. They've outlived governments, ideologies, even religions. But there's one thing they've never outlived: secrecy. The deeper you go, the more silence you find. Not ignorance, not confusion. Silence. As if the buildings themselves know how to keep a secret. As if the bricks remember what was done inside them. And here's the thing no one wants to hear: secrets rot. Not immediately, not obviously, but over time they ferment, they mutate, they become something else entirely, something heavier, harder to explain. And once you've buried a truth deep enough, sometimes even the people who buried it can't dig it back up. So what's really under these campuses? What happens behind the sealed doors, the badge-only elevators, the forgotten sub-basements? We don't know. Maybe we're not supposed to know. But if all knowledge is light, then this is the shadow it casts, and it's getting darker. I am the anonymous voice they hope you ignore. I speak what they won't print. I ask the questions that don't get answered. If one day these files stop, you'll know they got too close. Follow off record before they make us silent.